Thank you, Elizabeth, so much for being here today with Marcus and I. We are so excited to have you.
I'm so honored, and it's been a joy to be invited, so thank you.
Yeah, of course. So first, to get started, can you tell us a bit about yourself and kind of what you're all about as a teacher, maybe as just a human too? Anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, for sure. So I am a mama. I have two boys. I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. We love all things outdoor. So we're actually doing the 52 hike challenge this year, which means we're trying to get 52 hikes in a year, and they all are different locations. I taught both of my kiddos in school. Just a little interesting fact. They both went through my kindergarten classroom, and I was just talking to a parent today about just the kind of the struggles and difficulties sometimes with that if you have your own kiddos that come through. But for the most part, I just feel so lucky to have had that experience. I'm in my 13th year in the classroom. I'm at a new school this year, and I'm just loving life. I really feel like the school that I work at, the ethos, kind of the foundation of the school, is built off of the hero's journey, meaning that each kiddo is on their own unique journey. And it's my job as the teacher, as kind of the guide from the side, to just help them unlock their potential and to discover, what their journey looks like. And so, yeah, we're about 3 or 4 weeks into the school year. We just finished session 1 because I teach at a year-round school. So session 1 today was like exhibition day. And so we just basically showed the parents, kind of like an open house, what all the things are that we've been working on, projects. I put the parents and the students on a scavenger hunt. And so we're just kicked off there. And honestly, it's been so good to be back in person. In-person teaching has been, I did the whole year and a half with the pandemic and teaching online exclusively. I taught 4th grade, and then I taught kindergarten online. And I am so thankful to be back in person. So that's the really long answer, but that's me in a nutshell.
I'm sorry, I have to take an aside. Here we go, Marcus and his asides. But I love this idea of the hero's journey archetype. I was an English teacher, so come on, archetype, come on, hero, come on, journey. Do kids get to pick specific heroes? Is this a thing?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. This last week, we just talked about that as a staff. And one of my heroes in class really loves superheroes just in general. And he was kind of talking about, really the baseline for us in the classroom is really just kind of tailoring to what the students want and what they're interested in. And so he showed some interest in Superman. And so we do a lot of older student teaching. And so we have mentorships and stuff. And so he actually is now talking with another older hero or older student. And that older student's kind of mentoring him. And so I think what's going to happen is they're probably going to decide on a superhero and kind of model after the superhero. But the hero's journey really is it really has more to do with them, their core skills, and you kind of choosing what journey, what path they want to take. There's a lot of free choice in the classroom that I teach at, in the school that I teach at. But social emotional learning is huge. And then we do a whole units on practical life skills. So the students actually learn how to sew on a button and do all the things that they actually need in their life. So
I'm just going to be honest again. My question about the hero came from a place of jealousy. I'm just jealous that my teachers never referred to me as a hero or a heroine.
Right.
That could have changed everything for me. I mean, I could have been a superhuman by now.
Yeah, it's a different mindset than kind of your typical, I think, classroom. And there's a lot of buy-in from the heroes, that's for sure. The students really buy into that idea of the hero's journey. So
I'm bought into it. In fact, every time I say the word student, I'm gonna go for the hero terminology. So thank you. Thank you for taking that hero aside with me.
For sure.
I'm also loving the connection to the older students as well. It gives your little guys something to look forward to. And maybe they then, when they're in 4th grade, they can be like, oh, I hope I get a kindergarten buddy to guide through their
Yes.
journey as well. I just love that so much. And
Yeah.
today, our podcast, our theme is building a positive classroom culture, which it sounds like your school is really good at doing, and even in your little classroom as well. And your Instagram is called Kinder Hearted Classroom, which is amazing. What inspired you to create that?
When I was in kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher, her name was Mrs. Kinderheart, and she was the best kindergarten teacher. Her husband was a carpenter, and he would bring in all these wooden blocks and like drill holes in the wooden blocks and make these wooden pegs, and anything that we made in the classroom, she let us take home. I remember making pretzels. I still remember the smell of the dough and just the hands-on activities that she had. And like we were talking a little bit earlier just about the impact that some teachers have on students and how profound that impact, can be. And so 6 years ago, and when I was thinking about kind of starting, to create resources and sharing them on platforms and stuff, I was like, what name am I going to come up with? What can I say? Should I just say my name? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to name it after Miss Kinderheart. And so it's the Kinder-Hearted Classroom. And a lot of people say kinder-hearted. And really my tagline when I first started was just filling little hearts and minds with love, one lesson at a time. And so that's kind of the behind the scenes story there. But yeah, so I had a teacher. It was a teacher. That's why my platform is the Kinder-Hearted Classroom. It's named after her.
I love it.
So.
And I do have to say, I was telling Marcus earlier, I love your Instagram and I think you're super hilarious. And for example, the one the other day with the Play-Doh, and it was the voiceover from Mulan when he's like, "Shame on your family," and the lids were off of your Play-Doh. Like I was cracking up for a good while. I loved that one so much. So not only are you providing ideas, but you're also providing like comedy to teachers and a place for someone to go, hey, today all the caps were off of my dang markers again, and I've talked about it 700 times.
Congratulations again on your first session theme wrapping up today. Going backwards at the start of the year though, how do you start the year off to get that positive culture? Like, is there something special you do at the start of the year to build the culture from the beginning?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I honestly think that it's one of the hardest things that and classroom management are the two hardest things. So the school I teach at, each session is themed differently. So our first session is all about building classroom community. And we actually title it Building the Tribe, which sounds very granola-y, but we basically open the session up with a lot of team building games and activities and social emotional learning. And I teach, kindergarten. Our studio is called the Spark Studio because it's, that 4 to 6 year old range. And they're learning social awareness, self-awareness. They're learning how to be problem solvers and to make, decisions. And so a lot of the focus this first session has been getting them to think about others. So we do this thing at the end of the day called Shoutouts. And I am telling you, if no matter what grade you teach, because the entire school does this, and it's literally transformed the classroom community. And especially at this age, it's harder for them to know, to see that, oh, I fell down and he came over and picked me up, and I'm gonna give him a shout out for that. And so there's this that first week there was a lot of modeling on my part, but at this point we do at the end of the day we do a closing meeting, and we do our rose and our thorns. So we talk about basically growth mindset, things that we accomplished that we thought we did well with, and then things that were struggles or challenges for us. And then we do shout outs. We have a round carpet. We call it a Socratic discussion, where we sit down and I ask questions. And a lot of what I do is ask questions to get them to be thinking. But building that classroom community in the beginning for us really looks like thinking about other people and treating others like we want to be treated, right? And so when that shift takes place in the students' minds, it all of a sudden becomes more about, well, how can I be a blessing to other people? And so what we're doing right now at this age, we have these little boxes that have tokens inside. So if you can imagine just like a rectangular box with that opens up, it's like this little mini, like a photo box. And inside there are 5 tokens. And so they basically can earn a token whenever they receive a shout out. So if I was a student and Marcus did something kind towards me, say he helped me bring my water bottle to recess because my hands are full. At the end of the day, I would give Marcus a shout out, and Marcus would put a token on his token board, and we would, as a classroom or as a studio, we would talk about and praise Marcus. And then so what that does is it really helps kind of engineer and change the student's mindset to be thinking about others instead of themselves. Because at this age, that self-awareness, even social awareness, it's a hard concept for them to grasp. I'll give you an example. So yesterday I had a student who had a couple of friends who were coming up to me and they were saying, you know what, this person is annoying and this person is mean and this person, and they were making a list. And so I just brought that student over and I looked at them and I said, hey, this is what your friends are saying. Do you want to be known that way? How do you want to be known? When people talk about you, how do you want them to talk about you? And it was just that, like, I call it like a come to Jesus moment where like that student for the first time was like, it matters how I treat people. And so we just had that, like, it's exhausting. And as a teacher, I mean, especially at this age, those kinds of conversations, especially early on, it's just constant. It's just a constant thing. But it's so beautiful to see the students, it like clicks for them, because when they receive a shout out, they feel that special feeling. And then they want to return the favor. Right. And so it just becomes this like positivity, like undertone in the classroom. And I'll say this last thing, and then I can finish answering this question. But I always say, publicly praise and privately preach. And I am all about you bringing positivity to the good behavior and then having those little side conversations that are just like, I see you. I want you to become the best version of yourself. Also, is this who you want to be? And just doing that privately. And I feel like, because it's easy at the carpet, when you're at the carpet and you got little kiddos like doing, happy baby yoga poses and downward dog and everything, it's easy to call out those kinds of behaviors instead of praise the positive ones. And then all of a sudden, all the attention then gets pushed on the negative behavior and instead of the positive. So I'm constantly like, you are so kind. You go put a token on your token board. Oh my goodness, you are so thoughtful. I actually have like posters hung up in like, actually they're back here to growth mindset. So that as a reference for me as a teacher, I can at any point look over and see like, oh, I'm going to use this verbiage. Oh man, you showed some compassion when you gave up and so it's just constantly like modeling that vocabulary for them. And then they will take it and absorb it. And then they pretty soon are kind of leading the charge in that area. So
first of all, if I was in your class, I would be rich. Okay? I would be rich because I love praise. If it's a tangible token, I'm like, bet, gather all the tokens, Pokemon Go. But the biggest thing I sort of like took away from that is this concept of shout outs. I absolutely love the routine of that. I love the utility of it. I love how universal that concept could apply. Everybody should learn how to pause and shout out somebody doing good. I mean, even adults. It's something we forget to pivot to. The kids are just learning it for the first time, but we adults sometimes forget too. So thank you for that nugget. That's going to stick in my head. I'm going to start praising people, shout them out. Are there any other routines? Like, do you have another routine perhaps that you do that promotes that positive behavior? Like I'm checking that one. I'm just trying to get another one out of you.
Yeah. So shout outs, the token boards, and then just, I would just say having those just real life conversations. I do this thing called a sip and chat. So I'll make like little hot chocolates and using that 1x10 strategy. So there's times where I'll pull a student over. I have like a little rainbow like horseshoe table, and I'll just sip on some hot chocolate and talk with them, and they get a hot chocolate. And so we just literally sit and talk. And then that kind of behavior, I think a lot, how do I say that? I think students need to see it modeled, and then they can do it. And so, they then have the opportunity to do a sip and chat with a friend. And so they can, earn that. And we're pretty relaxed here too about, we do a lot of flexible seating. So then there's just some free choice. And I think really, to be honest, classroom community is all about relationships. Like, it's relationships first. And at this age, I'm speaking for like the K2 age. I think a lot of it is just helping them understand that they have the power to make an impact on their friends. And so a lot of times that just is a lot of conversations, and opportunities for them to shine. I think another thing that really helps for classroom management, but then also classroom community, is letting students step up into a leadership role and lead, and pushing that power to them. Like today, today was like our exhibition is what we call it, but it's like an open house. And as I was praising the students, I had one student this last session who just, I could depend on her for everything. I mean, she's just so reliable. And so I talked about it at the exhibition, and she ended up being kind of a student that was spotlighted, and the students see it because that's how she treats them. The conversation becomes less traditional, like, you got to sit in your desk and you can only do this and and more open to the classroom. Like, hey, what do you guys think we need to help our classroom community? Do you guys need more time together? Do you need more time at, like, how do you think, like, it really is just pushing the power to them. And so that way they take ownership of their learning environment and their studio. We call our classroom rules, we call them our guardrails. And so we make promise. I know I'm on video right now. Can I show you what our guardrails are? And I'll read them to you. Does that matter?
You can do whatever you want, girl. In fact, I saw it on your story today too.
Did you?
So if y'all want to follow her, you could catch this twice. I love the guardrails. I love them. Let's go.
Okay, I'm going to show you. So we've got guardrails behind me. So our 4 guardrails for this session were: I will not hurt anyone emotionally or physically. I will not distract. I will respect our studio, building, park, and everyone in it. And I will make things right when I've done I will make things right when I've done something wrong. So then from there, you guys ready for this? This is what we did today. You're getting like a...
I know what's coming because I checked the story. Okay. I've been wanting to see this.
And basically what we did was we made a contract together, and we came up with these ideas. So we have a Spark Studio contract now that reads like this. So I am on a hero's journey. I promise to focus and not hurt anyone emotionally or physically. I promise to be respectful to our studio, building, park, and everyone in it. So this is the same. I promise to make things right when I've done something wrong. I promise to try my hardest to reach all of my goals. And I promise to encourage my other friends on their journey. And then, do you guys see the little signatures?
Boom.
So
they signed it today.
Boom.
And so basically from there, we basically made those rules together. And from there comes everything else: classroom community, how our classroom management system is run. So if we're at carpet time and there's a hero that's talking to another hero and distracting them from learning, that hero will say, "You're distracting me. Can you please stop?" And they literally kind of call them out. And so when I say, like, I think a lot of times educators have it in their minds that that all of the instruction and all of the information has to come from them, or they have to, teach it. And that's just not true. There's a lot of accountability and ownership that can happen in a classroom when you push the power to your students. And so everything that we do kind of falls under the umbrella of our studio contract. That's
Yo,
great.
I've done a year with no contract, and then the rest of my teaching career with a contract.
Mhm.
And Chelsea, fun fact, it really does work for older students. It really does.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the year where I didn't do it on another episode, but I completely agree with you both. It put ownership on the
Mhm.
kids. I mean, all
Mhm.
it takes is a giant sheet of paper, right?
Yeah.
And you prompting your students and asking questions. Well, it is filthy in here. Well,
Yeah.
y'all do get really loud. Well,
Mhm.
mm, other people are complaining about the noise level in here.
Right.
Like, having the conversation is literally how we built our social contract as a group. And it
Yeah.
started as a conversation and it concluded in, we put the giant paper in the front and we all signed it together. My consequences were always related to food.
Mm.
Mr. Stein, if you break up, you have to bring us donuts the next day, or you have to bring us
That's
cookies.
good.
And
Oh,
so
that's so good.
they got me good because the rule that I broke all the time was no yelling.
Oof.
And
Mhm.
Mr. Stein, I have a very loud voice. So I get a little passionate. And let's just say my students always had a good supply of donuts. And then the rules were just for them. Like, they would hear me yell at other kids in the hallway and be like, Mr. Stein, donuts tomorrow? Caught you yelling at the kids at lunch.
Love it. Oh my
So
goodness.
that contract idea, I think, is fantastic. And I think what you said, it is in the hands of the kids, and no
Yeah.
group of kids contract is going to look exactly the same.
Right. Yeah, that's so good. And the accountability in it is built within. So a lot of times it relieves like a hero, student will I call them heroes, sorry. Students, and they are heroes. A hero will come up to me and they'll, tell me something that's like telling on another student. And a lot of times my answer is, why aren't you talking to them about it? That sounds like you
Mm.
need to have that conversation with them. If they're not treating you kind, you should say that. Say, hey, when you treat me that way, I don't want to be your friend. Do you want to have friends? And just constantly like pushing it back. And so we actually, the way that we hold each other accountable in the studio is if a hero asks another hero to whatever it is, you're distracting me, please stop doing that. If they ask 3 times and the hero doesn't do it, they have to pull what's called a hero buck. And so we have like an economy in the classroom. And so they'll lose a hero buck and they have to do it. And so it's one of those like things that helps me. And then you have the like ask 3 before me, rule.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can't open your lunch, or if you, need help opening the Play-Doh, oh, did you ask 3 people? And it just is constantly pushing them to be independent and problem solvers. And so I think, and that's like, I think that's more real life anyways, right? Like we're trying to raise, men and women who can problem solve and figure things out, and they're not dependent solely upon one person, but they go to their community and they go to their friends, and those relationships are important, and they want to be kind human beings. And so I think that, it starts young, and everything that we do here in the classroom, to be honest, a lot of like even the contract and stuff, I do at home with my own children. So we have car contracts. We've got home contracts where like, hey, this is, how do you guys want our space to be? When we have I just had a discussion with my oldest son this week about making his bed. And I'm like, your bedroom is not just your bedroom. It's in our house. How do you want, when people come over, what message do you want us to send them? Do you want them to feel like they're walking into a peaceful, calm, organized space? Or do you want them to feel like it's chaos in here? Like what, and so it was that whole conversation of like, be a kind and a compassionate and understanding and considerate human being.
You need a line of like t-shirts or like posters with these phrases. I'm like, that's good. That is good. Well, it's your bed in my house. So what are we gonna do? Oh, I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's such a good outlook at things. It's such a calm outlook at things. And I think the way you prompt and react to things plays a huge role in the way things are positively happening around you. So my question for you, Fran, is how, when you're having an off day, a negative day, how do you keep the classroom culture positive when you're off?
That was me a couple days ago, to be honest. I hadn't slept well the night before for some reason. I don't know if it was like a full moon or what. And then when I got to the classroom, the students were just so energetic. There was so much energy. And we had a couple little bumps in the road in the beginning of the day. And so when we sat down in the morning for our morning meeting, we kind of just talked about it. And I just kind of opened it up with like, hey, how's everybody feeling today? Where's your head at? Did you guys get good rest? How does your body feel right now? Do we need to pause and take like snack time? And so I think it's not always positive and it's not always up, and that's normal. And I think that should be more talked about. And like, I have bad days and I do try to stay positive and I try to like keep, and I do believe also that the positivity in your classroom, you have a huge effect on that as a teacher. If you're always coming in drained and down, and that does roll over, that energy does translate. And so that's why it's so important for self-care. You got to take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. I know we've all heard that quote, but I would challenge you and say, you should be pouring from the overflow. You shouldn't be coming in and anything being depleted from your cup. You should be so full when you come in that you're pouring from the overflow, which can still be challenging. You're not always full, but I think it's just a conversation. Like, bring it home to your students.
Yeah.
Bring it home. Like, hey, I'm human just like you. And if we could all work together, and then that way it also gives them an opportunity to step up and like, it gives them the opportunity to be like, hey, I'm going to think of other people today, and today it's, Elizabeth and my kids call me Elizabeth, by the way. And I probably I know that's super controversial, but I have my kiddos just call me Elizabeth because I'm just a human just like them. And they have, in my classroom, I obviously like I'm the guard, and I have to make sure that they're safe with the guardrails and all of that. But they're just tiny humans that are going to be adults just like me one day. And so I try to push as much of that power to them as possible. But so, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but we just talk about it. I do have bad days, and
you keep it real.
You just keep it real.
I mean, keeping it real is part of being positive. Just keep it real. Okay.
Yeah. And so social emotional learning in kindergarten is so huge, and it's huge across the board. Like, you have to learn how to be, a critical thinker and a problem solver, and you have to have a self-awareness and social awareness. And those are tools that every person needs to have successful relationships. Like, that's backed by science, right? So the same is true for me. Like, I need to have a self-awareness and a social awareness enough to be able to put vocabulary and words to what I'm feeling and thinking, so that I know, because when you do that, you kind of take the power out of the negativity. Basically, when you it's like a little kid who comes up and bumps his knee. Instead of saying, no, you're not hurting, you're fine, it's, that hurts. What do you think we should do? Do you need ice? What do you think we should do about that? And just giving them like the vocabulary and the words to say what it is. And then when you can say it, you can then move on. And I don't know if that makes sense or not. I feel like I'm kind of rambling now.
No, it does. And I love how like you're looking at your students as they're going to be adults. They're going to be adults that need to have these conversations. They're going to interact with 100 people a day. And the fact that you keep that conversation real at the 5-year-old level is amazing, because they can learn it early and realize, hey, I can have these conversations and I can talk about my feelings, and I'm feeling a little bit off, and maybe so-and-so can help me with that today. And I don't have to just keep it inside and be off on my own. I love that so much.
And they're not dependent on me solely. And that's not like I don't want them to be dependent on me, like, because I just don't want to do the work. It's find your people. Mm-hmm. When you're in this classroom, find your friends that hear you and see you and you see them. Find your people. Be that light. You have the opportunity. There's so many opportunities here for you to lead and to invest and to love on friends. And the same thing, when you have a bad day, go to your friends and tell them that you're having a bad day so they can have that opportunity to encourage and love on you.
That's why I also loved your little end of the day shout outs too, because it does bring in that confidence aspect for maybe the student that doesn't feel super connected to any certain person. But if they can see that one thing they did today and maybe make a friend now that friend gave them the shout out, and the little maybe shy student has someone that they can connect with that way. I loved that earlier when you mentioned that. And then also too, because we were talking about how you treated yourself with kindness the other day by just telling your students where you're at. How do you encourage your students to treat themselves with kindness if they maybe are talking bad about themselves or down on themselves? How do you encourage them?
I think having a growth mindset is probably key in that area. So the other day we were doing core time. So we were doing our math and language blocks, and one of my students was really struggling, and she was kind of getting emotional, and I could tell she was just feeling defeated. And so I just went over and it's always like you get down on their level and you look them in the eyes and just practice that pause. And I said, "How are you doing? You seem really frustrated right now." And she looked at me. It was like the sweetest thing ever. And she's like, "This is really challenging." And she was kind of emotional. And I said, "Do we need to take a break, or do you need to pause and just take a breather, step away, and then come back? Do you need help? What do you need right now? What do you feel like you need?" And basically, I think the answer is just giving them permission to fail and stepping back enough and letting them fail, but then coming in very lovingly in that supportive way and just saying, and asking them what they feel like they need, because the needs are and students are so individual. She might have needed a hug when another student might have needed help with the problem. Another student might have needed to take a break because they were overstimulated. And so it's just that real conversation again, coming back to that, like, if you're listening to your emotions in your body right now, what do you feel like you need? And so I think that practice just gets them. And I think adults need to do that check-in. You got to have that check-in,
I'm doing it right now in my head. I'm like,
what do I need?
You need a break?
Yeah, that inward reflection also at a young age is great too, to help them work through their struggles, but also know they can reach out and ask for help and all of those good things.
It's to me, it feels like you're making things that when we were in school were awkward. You're making awkward things the normal. It's awkward to go compliment somebody. You should, that's not awkward. That should be normal. Yes. It's awkward to talk about your feelings. No, it isn't. That should be normal. You should be able to say how you feel. And I'm picking up all of these nuggets from you. And I'm like, should I go back to the classroom?
And I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, wait, I have so much knowledge now. Maybe I'd be better at it.
I'm like, maybe, So I super, super appreciate all of those nuggets. You remind me of when I finally started implementing the social contract with my students. Things did super improve. And instead of shout outs, we did a mailbox system, because it wasn't no Google Classroom, baby. Wasn't no LMS. I had but 3 computers and 2 of them didn't work. So it was brown paper bags, the little lunch bags. And if you tape them to the back wall, every kid got to design their bag. That was fun. We spent an entire class period coloring the bag. Mind you, these are 13-year-olds, and they really wanted to color. So we designed our bags, and the concept was you complimented or shouted out in silence, because they are awkward at the middle school level. So saying stand up and shout out, I would have been a little afraid to do. So we did drop it in the bag, and I made it a point to drop every kid a note at least twice a week. Every single kid, because sometimes they're not going to get anything from their peers, because kids can be mean. But you can control the narrative by being positive yourself.
Yeah.
I just feel so affirmed. I feel so affirmed, Elizabeth. I feel like, you know what? I didn't have it together at the beginning, but I did have a contract and we did
So
have
good.
affirmations.
Oh, I
So
love that. To piggyback on what you just said too, I think it's important that we send those little shout outs to parents every once in a while, just letting them know that, hey, I see your child. And especially the kiddos who really struggle. I think of it like each parent has a love tank and each child has a love tank. And I'm going to need to take from that love tank, that bank someday, because this kiddo is going to have several hard conversations with me and mom and because of their behavior. So if I'm constantly depositing into that love bank, it's a lot easier to have those conversations. And, it's just like, and to be completely honest, like we use an app where we can basically schedule messages to go out. And there's times in the week I'll just sit down and like just nail out like 5 to 7. Hey, I saw your, kiddo do this. And then I'll schedule it to go out different days. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing more affirming as a parent to get a note from a teacher, hearing that they see your kid. It just like to know that your kiddo is seen and heard and loved. And so I think shout outs are really important. And shout outs for like, hey, thanks for always being punctual. Thanks for always dropping your kid off on time. We all know that's a challenge. Good job, mama. Things like that are thanks for being a room mom, or thanks for, whatever.
Love it. Love it. And then one last thing before we go, what is the one tip you would like to give teachers to help them build their tribe with all the challenges going on right now?
I think one of the hardest things as a teacher is feeling like you have enough time to do that. And with everything that's going on right now too, whether you're in-person teaching, hybrid teaching, or whatever, just finding the time to be able to do that. So I would say, I think just, sharing some of the things that I shared earlier about just even the 1x10 strategy, just being as deliberate as you possibly can in connecting with your students. And remember, if everybody can just remember a time in their life, like let's just pause here for just a second. Remember a time in your life when a teacher said or did something to you. Like I remember in high school, my sophomore year was the hardest year of my life. I had a lot of personal stuff going on at home with my parents, with my siblings. I went to school and I gave a presentation in a home economics class, and I felt completely invisible. And I gave the presentation, I sat down, and the teacher like walked by and she did one of these, like where you point and you do the whole finger, like, come here, I want to talk to you. And I was like, darn it, I said something wrong or I'm in trouble. And she went out in the hall and she praised me and built me up and said just the most positive things. She said everything from, I'm so proud of you. I've never seen this side of you before. You have so much potential. And she just like poured into me. And so if we can all just pause, we all have those little snippets and memories, and just remember those on the hard days when you feel like you can't, you don't have any other words, or you don't have the energy that you need to get through the day. And just remember that those little moments actually do matter. And it's so important to make time for those. Even if it's 5 minutes, and in those 5 minutes, you set your timer, and 1 minute of each of those 5 minutes, you're pulling kids aside and just having little heart to hearts with them. It makes a difference. So just do what you can, have grace for yourself, but be as deliberate as possible when you are trying to make connections and build your classroom community, especially during this time.
Wow. Elizabeth, friend, I'm so thankful because even I'm smiling more. My cheeks are hurting a little bit, and I appreciate the fellowship, mm-hmm. Like I appreciate you sharing a part of your life, a part of your world, a part of the reference. You caught that. And I just personally want to thank you from my heart for sharing your heart. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody's been in the classroom, whether you're a teacher or whether you've been a student. And so we all these kinds of conversations can be so relatable. Thank you, Chelsea and Marcus, for sharing bits of your story, whether it's been in the classroom or or being a teacher, it's just nice to have this community. And thanks for having a podcast where you're bringing us all together. You guys are amazing and doing big things. This kind of conversation, I think, is much needed, especially in light of everything that's going on right now. So thanks for all the work that you guys do.
Yes, and thank you. And considering you've inspired me to consider going back to the classroom, like you're doing great things as well, because honestly, yeah, that's a different podcast, like Marcus said, but you are so inspiring and doing great things in your classroom. And I know for sure you'll be to your students like Miss Kinderhart was to you, because I'm sure they'll know Elizabeth until their dying day. They'll know your classroom and what you brought to them. So yeah, just amazing.